And we are in good company live here on The Dawn Show, President's Day, and talking to Sam Davis, who is portraying as George Washington, General Washington, retired school teacher and actor now. And I know you do a lot of reenacting in the various activities around Philadelphia and the region. I love going up to Valley Forge and
Right.
of course the Delaware Crossing. That's a famous one on Christmas, they always do. But talk to me about George Washington as a husband and General Washington. So what was he like as a husband, as a father?
He was a caring husband. Martha Washington wasn't really his first love. His first love was someone else's wife at the time.
Dun dun
And-
dun.
Yeah, I know.
Now we go all Jerry Springer show.
You're right. But he, Sally Fairfax was his first love. And she was very flirtatious, and she was married to his best friend, George William Fairfax, of the Fairfax clan, who were very, very wealthy. And she was flirtatious, and she would flirt with General Washington, or George Washington, before he was general, and they would communicate with letters, but then she cut it off, the communication, and that hurt him. But he knew better. He knew never to go out of bounds with any type of relationship with someone else's wife, especially his best friend.
Right.
But he loved Martha, and she loved him. So they had a great relationship. Not the steamy one that might have happened with someone else, but a very good one. Martha Washington always followed General Washington during the winter quarters, and she never left his side during those times in winter, when any other general probably would have left his troops to go see his wife. General Washington never did that. Washington always stayed with his men, and Martha came to see him. General Washington never had his own children, probably because he was not able to. When he was younger, he followed his brother, Lawrence, to Barbados, and that's where he acquired smallpox. I think that did something to his
Fertility, in
yes,
other words.
and so he wouldn't be able to have children. But he always said that if he ever married someone else, if Martha passed away, that he would marry someone younger and have children. But I think he was just kidding himself.
Right. It's interesting.
Martha Washington was married before she married George Washington, and she had two children, Patsy Washington and Jackie, or Patsy Custis, and Jackie Parke Custis. And he treated them as if he were his father, their father. And they did everything together. He showed them, the good life of being on a plantation at Mount Vernon. And the bad thing was that during those times, Patsy acquired epilepsy. And when she was 17 years old, she was at the dinner table and she had a seizure and she died. And that really
Was devastating.
very devastating to General Washington and Martha Washington.
And you think about the times that they lived in. I mean, these were tough times
Yes.
where they experienced so much death
Yes.
of children, of
Yes,
their
right.
parents when they were younger.
Exactly.
And so it's interesting to see how it strengthened them seemingly
Right.
as people,
Right.
because they realized the value of life.
They did. There was so much disease back then, and the doctors weren't like the doctors that we have today. So they did everything for Patsy. They went to England, or they never went to England, but they sent messengers to England that they needed potions that might cure this disease, any type of thing that might help the epilepsy. They tried to find any type of cure, but nothing worked.
Yeah,
and
it's sad.
and it's terrible. It was terrible. But you know, historians look at her death as being somewhat, if death could be beneficial,
Like a
it helped-
pivotal moment for him, in other words, in his life.
You know what it did? It freed Martha Washington to leave Mount Vernon to come to George during the Revolutionary War. If Patsy was home and she was sick, Martha would have stayed there.
She would have been
So
caring for her.
it freed Martha up. It's a terrible way to look at things, but
Right.
that's the way historians do look at.
We'll pick it up right
situation.
there with more on George Washington. We'll look at some of the artifacts, and I do want to ask you the question because it's interesting. What would George Washington think about today's divisive society with Republicans and Democrats and Tea Party? Oh, they hate each other. We'll be right back. You are watching The Dawn Show, dedicated to President's Day and our first president, George Washington. So we have in the house Sam Davis, who is a retired school teacher, as well as George Washington's character that you love to portray, and obviously you've done a great job with it. But I just want to ask you, what would you think of George Washington, our founding fathers, and the sacrifice that was made for our freedoms, and if they could see today's world with a lot of hate, and particularly between politicians being so divisive. What do you think General Washington would say about that?
Well, there was a lot of hate back then too. It's always been, a struggle. But when Washington was elected president, he was elected unanimously president of the United States. Washington never believed in the parties, a Democrat and a Republican. He believed that a person who's running for office, you should just pick the person you feel can do the best job. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, that doesn't matter. You pick the person who's the best. It makes things easy.
Well, it would. It
Right.
would. Maybe that's good advice for people nowadays.
Right.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the artifacts you have, because these are actual antiques, right? These
They are.
the real deal.
Right. This is a British bayonet that I picked up a while ago. This could actually be one of the bayonets that punctured General Mercer at the Battle of Princeton. You never know what you're holding in your hand. If this bayonet could tell a story, it might tell a really an interesting one.
Tell a few stories.
Yes. So to have this artifact in my hand, I feel history. Yeah. And it's just not something that is not important. This is an important part of history of the United States,
And
even though it's British.
And what about the sword here?
The sword is just symbolic.
Okay.
For
What he might have had.
what Washington would have had, because he would use it as not as a weapon, but as an instrument of direction, where he would use this sword to direct the regiments in the position and where to attack. He would never use this as a weapon.
Okay.
Okay. But another piece of that I have is the paper.
Up front here, the
that's
paper?
right. That is a pay voucher from 1789. The Continental troops weren't getting paid. They were, Washington would always write letters to Congress about the pay of the troops. And how would we feel in today's world if we weren't getting paid if we were doing a job?
Got to pay our troops, and we've got to get going. I want to thank you so much, Sam Davis, for bringing history alive, and that's really what this was all about today. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I hope you make it a great President's Day, everybody. And remember to be a patriot, right? Have a great day, and we'll see you here tomorrow for The Dawn Show.